Another day, another big name conservative coming out in support of Joe Biden. Well, today, it's retired Navy Admiral William McRaven. He, the man who led the special forces when SEAL Team 6 killed Osama bin Laden. Now, he's doing something the top military brass usually avoids. He's endorsing a presidential candidate. Admiral McRaven, he's a self-described small government conservative, but he penned an op-ed piece in today's Wall Street Journal describing why he voted for Joe Biden. And I quote, "The world no longer looks up to America. They have been witness to our dismissiveness, our lack of respect, and our transactional approach to global issues. They have seen us tear up our treaties, leave our allies in the battlefield, and cozy up to despots and dictators. They have seen our incompetence in handling the pandemic and the wildfires. They have seen us struggle with social injustice. They no longer think that we can lead because they have seen an ineptness and a disdain for civility that is beyond anything in their memory. We need a leader of integrity whose decency and sense of respect reflects the values that we expect from our president. We need a president for all Americans, not just half of America." In the meantime, a group called Republican Voters Against Trump, they've been cutting ads featuring ordinary Americans who have buyer's remorse. And they're also featuring a former top official in Trump's own Homeland Security Department describing what he had to deal with.
I'm Miles Taylor. I served as the Chief of Staff of the Department of Homeland Security under the Donald Trump administration. I would go into the office, I would read my intelligence brief, and then it was my job to help the Department of Homeland Security to keep our country safe. What we saw week in and week out, and for me after 2.5 years in that administration, was terrifying. We would go in to try to talk to him about a pressing national security issue, cyber attack, terrorism threat. He wasn't interested in those things. To him, they weren't priorities. The president wanted to exploit the Department of Homeland Security for his own political purposes and to fuel his own agenda.
My next guest, the founder of the group that made that ad, she also penned a piece in The Atlantic called "Why People Who Hate Trump Stick With Him." Sarah Longwell, she held 50 focus groups with Trump voters in the last 2 years as she attempted to understand what they were thinking. She joins us to tell us what she found. I've always been wondering the why part of it, and for the last 2 years, you did more than anecdotal stuff. You did 50 focus groups. So let's break them into different categories and tell me what you found. First off, let's start with those who changed their mind. And from what I got from your piece, particularly women, you didn't even need to wait for many of them to 2018. They had a visceral buyer's remorse. They understood the idea of Trump, but they didn't like the reality of Trump.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you have to remember, and I forget this sometimes, that people felt like they knew Donald Trump, that he had been this sort of carefully curated businessman who had lived, in their living rooms for however many seasons The Apprentice was on. And so they saw him as this carefully curated businessman and thought that he was decisive and that he would do a good job for the economy. And they really disliked Hillary Clinton. And so they kind of took a chance on Donald Trump. And one of the things they say all the time is, well, I thought that he would rise to the dignity of the office, or I thought he would grow into the office. But, what I hear from them now is he's unpresidential, he's unprofessional. I can't believe he actually talks like this. Oh my gosh, I can't believe other countries are seeing us, behave this way. It's just embarrassing. And so for a lot of those voters, they were sort of out immediately. And I think you saw the repercussions of those voters in the 2018 midterms where Democrats really, picked up those 40 House seats. But then there's been this sort of next tranche of voters. And I really have focused on women in these focus groups. And they decided they were kind of hanging in there with the president, back in 2019, because they said the economy was doing well. And, we were divided and it wasn't great, but things were mostly okay in the country. And they were glad to see so many jobs being created, et cetera. Then the pandemic hit. And I think that when you have a health crisis on top of an economic crisis, then on top of that, a racial crisis, all of these, one of the things I just hear so often is that people think, A, the country's going in the wrong direction, and B, they think Trump is making it worse. They don't think that he is fit for the moment. And so I think that there was this group of people who might have stuck with him if things had been okay with the economy, but he's basically been exposed by events as being unfit. And for that reason, a lot of these women say they're just out on him for 2020.
And then there's other folks that you've talked to in these focus groups where there was either singular issues or singular moments. I know some talked about what happened with George Floyd, but others as well, including I read McCraven's editorial. You could tell for some of it's what happened in Lafayette Park or wherever else. Some people related to you specific moments where they said, "That's it. That's a bridge too far for me."
Yeah, I've done so many focus groups at this point that I've actually seen a lot of people more than once. And so I've been able to kind of track their thinking over time. And there was this one young woman who'd really stuck with me. She was from Pennsylvania, and she had said back in 2019 that she was going to vote for Trump because it was better the poison you know than the poison you don't know. And she just really couldn't get there on Democrats. But then I saw her again maybe 4 months ago. And what she told me was that after the George Floyd killing, she just saw online all of this sort of hatred towards George Floyd, but she was watching the protests and she was really moved by them, and she really felt like we did need to have a racial reckoning in this country. And she was now, really leaning towards Biden. She was saying she thought she was going to vote for him because she just thought he could do more to sort of bring the country together. And she thought we did need to have a new conversation about race. These are the women who voted for Donald Trump in 2016 who just can't find a reason to vote for him again because he's not talking about the things that matter to them, that are top of mind for them. These women are looking for a plan around coronavirus. And instead, Donald Trump is running the same sort of base play that he ran in 2016. And they don't care about Hunter Biden's laptop. They just don't. And for Donald Trump to sort of pick a fight with Anthony Fauci, they want somebody who's going to listen to Anthony Fauci. These women like Anthony Fauci. They want to be listening to the scientists. And so this is one of the reasons that you see Donald Trump getting up at his rallies and sort of imploring women, suburban women, please vote for me. It's because he knows that these women who voted for him last time, they're not going to make the same mistake twice.
Now let's get, Sarah, to the folks who are still sticking with him. And I'm curious, do they do it because, as he said, he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, they're going to follow him off a cliff, or is it because they hate the alternative, Democrats and guys like me, the media, even more?
Yeah, it's the latter. I think that there are a lot of people out there who are Trump fans. They go to his rallies. They're really into him. That's his base. But there's another decent percentage of these Trump voters who will hold their nose and vote for Trump, even though they really don't like him, because they think the Democrats are worse. And, the Democrats, look, they nominated Joe Biden, who was one of their more centrist candidates, and that's allowing them to win over a lot of people. But there's still a lot of Republicans who are convinced that Joe Biden is going to be controlled by the AOC, Bernie Sanders wing of the party, who think that, the left has gone far too far left and that, Joe Biden will be beholden to them. And people feel like they just can't trust the Democrats, even though they know that Donald Trump really isn't good. And so I think one of the things that's worth people thinking about is, there can be a temptation to say, well, we're undergoing a major political realignment in the next election. And maybe that's true. I think a lot of these suburban areas are shifting and changing in ways that Republicans may have trouble winning them back. But there's a lot of these other voters where, Democrats would think that they could pick them up because they dislike Donald Trump so much. But they're dug in, and it really is this kind of negative polarization that is driving so much of our politics, where these voters, it's less about what they're for, and it's more about what they're against, and they're against those Democrats.
Sarah, I really appreciate the time. And again, if you folks haven't seen it, check out her piece in The Atlantic, Why People Who Hate Trump Stick With Him. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
And speaking of a constituency that will be very interesting to watch, evangelicals. They continue to support the president in overwhelming numbers, but there are some cracks forming. After the break, a new group of Christian leaders who've lost faith in the president. Well, he'll join us to explain why.